prices, quantities, and I don't even remember, 23 was it, $1.49, and etc. And we had numbers. This one went to 25 before, and this one, what was it, 5? Okay. So, previously, the quantities were 25 and 5 at these prices, but what if they changed to 30 and 6? A new set of quantities for each price. That is when demand changes. So no matter how many price quantity combinations, the quantity response to the price is different. And in this case, it's gone up, right? There's more quantity there, there's more quantity there, and even, what do we have, a $6.50 price, and it was 1 or 0 or something. It might actually go up from 0 to 1, or from 1 to 2. So all of the prices would react to the same, excuse me, did I say prices? Sorry. All of the quantities would react to changes in all of the prices. And when you have a new column with a whole bunch of different quantities, more or less than the ones before, that means that the demand curve actually shifts. And in this case, this would be an increase. Because at all prices, the quantities are higher. So we're going to buy more at every price, like a fad. Or like diapers when there are a whole bunch of babies born. Okay? Now, we also have a decrease that could happen. And that would be moving in to smaller quantities. So let's just go with this 23 cents, okay? This quantity was 25, and then an increase, it would have shipped out to, say, 30. But with a decrease, it would cut back the 23 cents. We would be ordering less. This is not to scale, obviously. So if it went that way, Q2 would be, what, 20? And this would be 4. So if the quantities at 20, the quantity at 23 becomes 20 instead of 25, then we know that we're decreasing to less quantity at every price. And so at $1.49 instead of 5, we're going to less. Got it? Okay. Now let's talk about what these things are that can do that. How about the number of consumers? I'm going to put tastes up there too. Because I want to tell a story about a company that had a lot of problems. And that is the Gerber baby food company. The number of babies being born right after World War II was really high. A lot of baby boomers were born. And so the Gerber factory grew and grew and grew. And the company, you know, it was a big company. And then suddenly, for a variety of reasons, people stopped having babies at the time they should have, according to history. You know, you get to be a certain age and your generation has babies. And feminism came along, the pill came out in the 1960s, in 1973, Roe versus Wade. There were a lot of things going on, and people didn't have babies. And so I was like one of the later generations of the baby boomers. And when I was in college, Gerber was pretty desperate. And so they tried something. We used to have this catalogs. We didn't have an internet. We couldn't check our classes on the internet, so we had to look at this newspaper that had the courses printed on newsprint. But they would staple it inside a national magazine that had, it was the size of a newspaper, but big glossy pictures and stories about campus life and stuff. And so that's what they would do. They would send in their newspapers, basically, of all the course times so that we could pick our courses. But in order to read that, we would see this beautiful glossy magazine that covered it, and it was stapled inside it. So you open it up to the front page. Inside the front page, full glossy, full color picture, there's a young woman there, and she's going, "We sneak Gerber apricots in the dorm." Yeah, that's what we thought too. Your reaction, what? Yeah, we thought, that's crazy. What do they think? What were they trying to do? They were trying to start a fad to get college students to eat baby food in the dorm. And they thought we were stupid. I mean, people are people. Your reaction is my reaction. It didn't work. And I was telling my classroom about that. And I always tell them I like them to keep their phones out and look stuff up as I talk. And some student found the ad. It was actually back then, and found the ad. I don't know where you would look, but somebody was a great Googler because they found the advertisement I was talking about. So you can Google it and find it if you want. We sneak Gerber apricot in the dorms. Can you imagine that, though? Hey, gotta go make a baby food run. Anybody in? Okay. So they were trying to change tastes, and tastes can go directly into changing demand, right? At every price, more people are buying it because it's cool. It's like, believe it or not, minivans used to be really, really cool, and they sold like hotcakes. And now, if your parents got you a minivan, or gave you grandma's minivan, you might understand if money's tight, but you wouldn't think, oh, this is great, I'm gonna go show it off, right? By the way, I'm driving a minivan a lot. I inherited my mother's minivan. Had very little miles. It really literally was only driven by a little old lady to church on Sunday. So we're driving it around town. If you see me in my minivan, just wave. Okay. Number of consumers is also related. They were selling less and demand had fallen because at any price there just was less quantity sold. Why? Because there were less babies. So this is one where I'm going to beat your international marketing professors to the story because I can. You're not going to take international marketing yet, but they'll tell you this story along with some others about big mistakes made by companies that were trying to get into the international market. One of them they'll tell you about is the Chevy Nova that they tried to sell in Mexico with a name like Nova, no go, right? Lots of mistakes like that. Trying to sell white refrigerators in Pacific Rim countries where white is the color of coffins. Yeah, it's dumb stuff. Well, Gerber decided to try and sell their stuff in countries that in those days had a much higher level of I just went blank on the word. People couldn't read. And while that has gotten better in the previous years, in those days, A lot of people couldn't read. And there was violence at stores that agreed to sell Gerber baby food. A lot of stores wouldn't sell it. No, and Gerber didn't know why. They just had no clue. Illiteracy, that's right. There was higher illiteracy in those days in a lot of developing countries in the world. And they were trying to sell it overseas in these developing countries where people looked at the picture on the box to find out what was in the box. What's on the lid of Gerber baby food? Yeah, pictures of babies. So that was a big international marketing failure. Resulted in a lot of violence too. So these are some things that changed demand. Let's try some others. How about the price of a related good? And we have to think in terms of substitutes and complements. And I'm going to write income up here. We're getting through these rather quickly. But let's start here. Price of a related good. There are two ways things can be related: substitutes and complements. Now notice this is an E. Okay? There is another word, and it's a different word. And you need to know the difference. This is college. Okay? Complement with an E. Okay? What does that mean? It means things that go together. You know, salt and pepper, bread and mayonnaise, French fries and ketchup, peanut butter and jelly. Okay? Substitutes are things that you buy instead of each other. Like you go here to get your degree, or you go to Murray State to get your degree. Or Union, or whatever. You see what I'm saying? You do one or the other. Okay, so substitutes are you buying Nikes or Adidas? You usually don't buy both. So we're going to find that the price is going to affect things different directions. So let's continue to talk about soda. If we're talking about Coca-Cola and the price of Pepsi goes up, that can affect the demand for Coke, can't it? So we're not talking about the price of Coke now. We're talking about, we're looking at the quantity, we're looking at the demand for Coke. And the price of Coke would not affect the demand for Coke. It would affect the quantity demanded for Coke. But the price of Pepsi can affect the demand for Coke. So the price of something else that's related, and I know you and I probably both agree that Pepsi and Coke are not perfect substitutes. But they're close enough that we're going to pretend they're substitutes. Okay? So if the price of Pepsi is suddenly much more expensive, don't you think there's going to be some people who will buy more Coke because the price of Pepsi went up? If the price of Pepsi gets really, really cheap, people will probably buy less Coke, right? Okay. So, what's the direction here? With substitutes, the price goes up and the quantity also goes up, right? So Pepsi, this would be price of good A. A good in economics is something that is sold that the economy wants to have. We also have economic bads, or things that we don't want to have happen, like pollution. But, so this is price of good A. When that goes up, the quantity of good B goes up, right? Same direction. So one goes up, the other goes up. When Pepsi gets really cheap, we buy less Coke, right? So the demand for Coke falls. Pepsi's cheap, we buy less Coke. So it would go the same direction again. Price of one falls, the quantity of the other falls. So these two data sets, the prices and the quantities, they move in the same direction. That means that this is a positive relationship between these. Just remember your 8th grade math, high school math. So with substitutes, there's a positive relation between the price of the related good and the substitute. With complements, oh, by the way, what's the other word? I got off track a little bit. Complements. This means salt and pepper, that sort of thing. Complements is a different word completely. It's, I like your blouse, Dr. Sumner. Yeah. Aren't those pretty shoes, Miss Smith? Okay, that's a compliment with an I. That's not what we're talking about. They're different words. So make sure you get an E on any tests. So if I ask you and I give you two words, and one of them has an I and one of them has an E, pick the one with the E, okay? So complements, it's going to go the other way. These would be things that go together. Coke and ice cream. Not everybody eats or drinks, ice cream.